battles and your stuff right now, maybe God is trying to get you back in line to the place where you need to be. So Israel was down at their lowest depth. And so what did God do? God he allowed another nation to rise up and take control over Israel. He allowed the Assyrians to come in. He allowed them to come in and take them and put them in bondage and put them in chains and put them in slavery. Why did he do that? Why? Because they had issues. They had issues just like we have issues today. And I submit to you, people of God, that the reason why sometimes some of the things that are happening in our country are going on is because we have issues. The reason why sometimes we're in the shape that we're in as a nation and as a country, as a culture and as a people is because we have issues. Just like the children of Israel had issues. They had issues like fornication. They had issues like adultery. They had issues even back then like illicit sex and homosexuality and sexual immorality. And to bring it to today's time, we got issues like that. We got girls who don't know if they're boys. They're boys who don't know if they want to be girls. We got issues like that going on in our society, going on in our schools, going on in our churches, going on in our homes, going on our pulpits. We got issues that are going on all over the world. We got issues that are happening. They have issues going on. We got racial issues, black against white. Y'all know what's happening with Trayvon. We got issues in our country. We got issues that are going on, hatred that is going on, strife and jealousy. We got issues that are going on. We got black on black crime. We fussing about Trayvon, but we're not fussing about our own black people that's killing each other on the streets. We got issues going on that black men are killing each other every day in our city, and it's going down because of drug abuse, going down because of anger, going down because of drugs. We got issues going on. We got drug abuse. We got alcohol abuse. We got classism issues, the have and the have-nots. The rich against the poor, the upper class against the middle class. It seems like the middle class, if you find yourself in that place, you carrying the burdens of the rich and the poor. We got classism issues that are going on in that society. We got government issues that are going on in our society. Government trying to take away financial aid for the seniors. We got issues going on in our society. We got government issues where they're trying to shut down all the mental health hospitals and clinics in the city of New Orleans. And so you got people that have mental health that can't get no care, that can't get nobody to see about them, can't get nobody. They're building more prisons. 1 out of 3 black men gonna end up in prison or in jail. We got issues going on here in our society. We got some issues, and these issues, these government issues, making people retire early when they don't want to retire, taking away their salary, raising up tuition in school for a good education. I'm trying to do the right thing. I'm trying to make it, but I can't even afford to go to college to get a higher education. They got some issues that are going on. We got all kind of issues. We got moral issues that are going on. TV is raising our children because mama and daddy out there clubbing and they out there doing what they want to do. So we letting TV raise our kids. We got issues. We got the housewives and the basketball wives that's raising our children. That has the housewives, the basketball wives, or should I say basketball girlfriends, exes, and baby mamas, because ain't none of them married to nobody anyway. That's the moral compass that we got there. That's what's guiding our children. Telling us what to do, how to think, how to dress, how to act. They become the moral compass. We got spiritual issues. We got church issues. Spiritual leaders who we've come to love and their trust have let us down, have manipulated the system, have taken advantage of the people they're supposed to serve for their own personal gain and greed. We got spiritual issues. Amen. You got to, hey, I got to call it like I see it and say what the Lord told me to say, because I'd rather be in trouble with him than be in trouble with man. So, you know, hey. I mean, this is what I got to do what the Lord told me. We got spiritual issues. Spiritual issues. And so because of these issues, God allowed the enemy to come in and take advantage of a situation. And I don't know what your issue is on this morning, but maybe because of your issue, God allowed some things to happen in your life. Maybe God allowed the enemy to come in like a flood, and maybe you feel like I'm going through. I got some issues. So at this point in our text, God has used the Assyrians to come upon his people and hold them captive. But God, as I look through this text, there's another question that comes to mind. There's another question that comes to mind when I look at this text, God. Everybody don't have issues. God, what about the remnant? What about the remnant, God? What about the ones that haven't bowed down? What about the ones who are trying to live right? What about the ones who come to church? What about the ones who give and tithe faithfully? What about the wife that's trying to keep her marriage together, but barely holding on, trying to raise her children and do what she has to do? What about her, God? What about the husband that's working 2 and 3 jobs, trying to provide for his family, God, but can't get a break? What about him, God? What about the young person that's resisting peer pressure, God? What about the young person that's not out here sleeping around, that's not out here being celebrated because they're doing the right thing? Because we like to talk so much about who's doing the wrong thing that we don't celebrate our children and youth that are doing the right thing. What about them, God? What about that remnant, God? Do they have to suffer, God? What about the faithful Christian, God? What about the faithful soldier, God, that's sitting in church and that's trusting in you, but cancer has stricken their body, God, and they love you, but they're fighting cancer, God. They're fighting sickness, God, not by no fault of their own, God. What about them who are suffering with AIDS, God? What about when I look in Africa? What about when I look in other countries? What about the remnant, God, that's doing the will of you, God? What about the ones that have been lied on, God? What about the ones that have been cheated? What about the ones that's been talked about and mistreated, God? What about the students that's standing strong, God? What about the grandmother who raising her child's kids, God, who should be enjoying the latter years of her life, but she got to work in McDonald's just to make ends meet because she don't have no aid, God? What about that person, God? What about that, God? What about us? What about the mother struggling to pay bills, God? What about the Christians that are out of work, God? What about us, God? I know that the nation is suffering because of sin. I know that some of our homes are suffering because of sin. But Father, my question is, will relief come? Will relief come for the remnant? Because God can't take these enemies anymore. I can't take these enemies that are surrounding me anymore, God. I feel like I'm about to break down, God. I came to talk to somebody who walked through the doors with a broken spirit on today, who walked through the doors with tears in their eyes doing worship because they got to wear a mask when they come into church because they really can't show you what's going on in my life. When you ask me how I'm doing, I say fine, but if you really knew how I was doing, if you really knew what I had to go through just to get to the house of the Lord on today, if you really knew the phone call that I just got as I pulled up in the sanctuary, if you really knew that they just told me that they're going to cut my lights off when I get back home, if you really knew that I got fired from my job on this week, if you really knew all the things, if you really knew I got beat before I came to church, if you knew that I was struggling because I was about to take that drink before I walked in the house of the Lord, if you really knew that I had cigarettes and condoms in my pocket right now, and I'm about to go do something bad before I walk out this church, if you really knew what I was going through, if you really could touch on the issues that I'm dealing with, God, what about us? What about me that's holding on, God? Is there a word from me? Is there a word from the Lord that can help me in my situation? My child is in jail, and I don't know how I'm going to make it. They on the streets, and I want them back in the house of the Lord. Is there a word for me, God? Well, I'm so glad you asked that question today. I'm so glad that you came in with those issues on today. I'm so glad you had the issues that the children of Israel was facing today. So can I answer the question for you today? Can I speak to your issues this morning? Can I speak to what you're dealing with this morning? If you don't mind, can I quote the prophet Isaiah to speak a word to your issues, because God is still the same yesterday, today, and forevermore. So the same word that God spoke to the children of Israel back then through Isaiah is the same word that will change your situation on today. So if you don't mind, for those of you who are going through, those of you who are surrounded by enemies, can I quote Isaiah 54? And let me tell you, verse 1 is the answer to your problems. Isaiah 54:1 says, sing. Sing, O barren. Sing. That word sing means to cry out, to shout for joy. In other words, he's saying, you who are barren, if you barren, ain't nothing happening in your life. You've been feeling down and depressed. He said the word for you prophetically is to shout, oh barren. Shout, those that did not bear, and break forth into singing. There needs to be a praise in this place. There needs to be a shout in this place. He said to break forth into singing. He said to cry aloud. You got to cry loud and spare not. Sometimes you can't be afraid to get your makeup messed up. You can't be afraid to lose your hair. You don't care how much the weed costs. I don't care how much the shoes cost. Sometimes you can't be afraid to get crazy for God. He said to shout, O barren, shout those that did not bear, break forth into singing. Cry aloud, thou that did not travail with child. He says, for more are the children of the desolate than the children of the married wife, saith the Lord. What does that text mean? That means that if you sing and if you shout, I know you may not have nothing right now. You may be looking at somebody else, looking at what they got. But God said before the day is over, when you start to shout and you start to sing, you're going to have more than they have. I don't know what your more is. I don't know what your more is, but God said, I'm going to give you more joy. I'm going to give you more peace. I'm going to give you more prosperity. I'm going to bless you in the city, and I'm going to bless you in the field. I'm going to bless you when you come, and I'm going to bless you when you go. You will have more. In other words, you're going to have more, and so because you're going to have more, we're going to go down to verse 2. It says, enlarge the place of your tent. I came to tell somebody to start enlarging the place of your tent. Enlarge the capacity of your mind. I came to tell somebody to get ready to start enlarging your tent. He said, enlarge the place of your tent. He said, stretch forth your curtains. You better start getting a picture of what God is getting ready to do for you. God is saying, I'm going to bless you so big that where you at right now won't even be able to contain it. So you better start enlarging your mind, enlarge your concepts. Get outside of the walls of this church. Get outside the walls of that job. He said, start thinking big. You got to start thinking big. He said, enlarge the place of your tent and stretch forth the curtains of your habitations. You about to get a bigger house. You about to get a bigger place. You about to get bigger stuff. He said, spare not and lengthen thy cords and strengthen thy stakes. He said, for thy shall break forth on the right hand and on the left hand. Somebody's getting ready to break forth in some. I speak breakthrough in your life in this place today. There's a break. I can see the breaking of day. Right now, somebody, it's been dark in your life. It's been raining in your life. It's been storming in your life. But I came to tell you that the sun is about to shine in your life because Because it's a new season, y'all. It's a new day. There's a fresh anointing that's flowing your way. It's a season of power and prosperity too. It's a new season, y'all. It's coming to me. He said, for thou get ready to break forth. I dare you to look at somebody and tell them, I'm coming out of this thing, y'all. I'm coming out of this thing. I'm getting ready to break forth out of this thing. I'm getting ready to shout on today. I'm coming out of depression. I'm coming out of oppression. I'm coming out of loneliness. I'm coming out of low self-esteem. So I don't care if you're looking at me funny. If I got my hands up, if you got my hey, I got tears flowing from my eyes. But guess what? I'm coming out of this thing, and I'm not worried about what you're thinking about me, because you don't know like I know what the Lord has done for me. You don't know where he brought me from. You don't know my story. You don't know how he delivered me. You don't know how he set my free. You weren't there when Jesus found me. You don't know the cost of that oil in my alabaster box. You don't know the cost of my praise. You don't know what it cost me to be here today. I could have been dead, sleeping in my grave, but God made old death behave. And so guess what? I'm thanking God because it was his amazing grace. How sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. I once was blind, but now I see. I've been surrounded by enemies. I've been surrounded on every hand. But God, but God, but God delivered. And so because God delivered, y'all, it's time to shout. It's time to shout. It's time to shout. It's time to shout. I'm going to shout till they hear me on Reed Boulevard. I'm going to shout till they hear me on I-10. I'm going to shout till they hear me on Ship. I'm going to shout because the Lord has been good to me. He set me free. And why am I shouting? Because I don't have to be scared. I don't have to be ashamed. I don't have to be confounded. Because God said that you're going to forget the shame of your youth. That thing in your past that everybody be trying to bring up. God said, I'm going to cause you to forget that stuff. I'm going to throw it in the sea of forgetfulness. Never to rise again. So don't talk about my past, but let's talk about my future. Let's talk about where God's going to bring me in the future. And I'm closing with this. That God said, I'm going to wipe your past out. So when I get home, I want you to read the rest of this chapter because there's some good stuff in here. But can I close with this? Can I close with the promise of the chapter? Why am I really shouting? Why am I really getting happy? I'm really shouting because of verse 7.